kind of what God has been doing. And his spiritual warfare, it's all been right on time. Yeah. So I kind of had what you spoke of, Brother Blake, last week on that whole just shedding the old and becoming new. This is my time, so it's exciting.
All right, yeah.
So I've been spiritually distracted this week, but to get into it, so the seeing blind, I really feel like God has been opening my eyes, and I'm in one of those situations where I've grown up in the church, and I know the ways of the Lord, and I know the scripture, and I've heard the scripture, and I know the practices, but truly coming into seeing God for myself. So,
yeah. Amen.
Yep, so let's get into it. So I'm coming from John chapter 9.
All right.
It's kind of a mix for scriptures, but I'm just going to kind of give an overview. This is the account where Jesus is passing by the blind man, and I wanted to note that the blind man is not necessarily looking for, well, let me slow down, sorry. I made this for a reason. Keep me on track. Okay. I'm like you, Pastor. I learned how to do some sliding and stuff. First, I want to talk about sight and the natural and visual impairment. Visual impairment. So when light isn't focused, I didn't mean to do it like this. When light isn't focused properly, it causes blurry vision, and there's different types. You have nearsightedness, which is myopia. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Farsighted, and then there's anywhere from mild vision loss to total blindness. And then just fun fact, I looked up what lazy eyes were, and it's basically where your optic system isn't completely developed in your eye, your brain favors one eye over the other. And so that muscle is strengthened over the other. Side note. And so let's go ahead and get into chapter 9. We're going to talk about the natural blindness and then the spiritual blindness. So in chapter 9, Jesus is on his way, and he notices the blind man. And again, I wanted to note that the blind man wasn't looking for Jesus. He was just doing his thing. He's a beggar. He's on the streets. And Jesus stops off to perform a healing. He instructs him to, he spits in the mud, makes a paste, and instructs him to go and rinse it off in the river of I know I'm going to butcher it up. What's it? Shalom?
No, it's a blurry.
Let's keep rolling. I'll find it later. Starts with this. And he does so, and he comes back, and everybody is questioning, is this the blind man that we've seen since birth, begging on the road? And it's confirmed that it is. He's been called in to speak with the Pharisees, and they question him about who's done this, how has he done this, and he continues to repeat himself to the point that they call in the parents. They confirm that this is our son. Yes, he was born blind, and they question the parents. And the parents say, well, he's of age, ask him.
That's right.
Okay, well, why do you keep asking me the same question? I told you already.
Yes.
And so they've decided that since Jesus is performing these miracles on the Sabbath, that he can't be holy. And again, I was speaking with my sister this morning, which kind of brought so many things on me where it's such a blessing to be in a place where I can minister to my sister and she can minister to me, and it's just been, I can't explain it. But she was kind of caught up in the whole Sabbath thing. She was like, well, she wants to start going to church on a Saturday and find a church that practices worship on a Saturday. And I was able to kind of give her some of the word that's been given to me about that going away from the law of Moses, but coming to now that the laws are written on our hearts, and that we take the laws are with us everywhere we go. Therefore, we're always in a state of worship. We're always in a state of prayer. And it was just good. And so, in getting back to them, I think Jesus has come to kind of shatter all of those traditional practices. Yes. And he said, my Father's always working, and as am I. And so he's performing on any given day. So, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And so, again, he continues to question them, and then I guess the blind man is then removed from the synagogue, and I guess kind of ostracized. And I think that was the parents' hesitation in speaking up on his behalf, because they were afraid of maybe the wrath that would come down from the Pharisees. And he goes on, and Jesus hears of what's happened to the healed blind man, and he goes in and confirms who he is. And I just want to read that part. And you'll find it in chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus heard that they had put him out, and finding him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered, who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, You have both seen him, and he is the one who is talking with you. And he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, for judgment I came into the world, so that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may become blind. Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, we are not blind too, are we? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin, but since you say, we see, your sin remains. And I think that's what, being ahead of myself again, that's what really hit me, is that those of us who believe we have sight, Jesus has come to clarify that that's not the case. Let me get into this. So, in looking at a spiritual diagnosis of sight and visual impairment, you like that? MD Jesus, the ultimate optometrist.
All right.
So there's the seeing, there's the blind, there's the willfully blind, and I want to touch on Galatians 4:9.
All right.
But now that you know God, or rather are known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and miserable forces? Do you wish to be enslaved by them all over again? And going back to the Pharisees, for a second I was like, how foolish are they? You have the Son of God. Okay. I went into a place of judgment with the Pharisees where I see them and I'm like, how do you have God standing before you and proving himself over and over again, and still you reject the idea that this is God? And then I had to reflect, like, Lord, this is me. How often have you revealed yourself to me and proven your divinity and the works that you've done in my life, and still I question your being.
Yes.
I question your presence in my life and your presence even now.
Yes.
So that was me. Let me keep going. So the seeing the blind and the blindsighted. I made that up. And actually, to get into the academics of it, it's blindsighted. We often say it's blindsighted in this way. And then there's the willfully blind, which I believe that the Pharisees, I believe in their hearts that they knew this was God. And even the healed man said to you, how can you say that this is not he when you say you don't know where he comes from?
Right.
And how can he perform these miracles without the power of God residing within him? I think I've hit all my points. Okay, I moved a little faster than I thought, but I play this game with my kids at school. It's called Brick and Mortar. And what I do with them is I give them the key words from the lesson, and they're supposed to take those key terms and then put it into a sentence where you kind of come up with the main idea or what your takeaway is from the lesson. And I couldn't come up with enough terms, but I just wanted you all to maybe reflect on maybe your personal spiritual diagnosis, where you are, in your sight, in your blindness, and again, just kind of self-reflecting. I've been open with my self-reflection, but it's, I wrote a poem maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I was digging around trying to find it, but it was called The Dead Woman Walks. And I was referencing in being saved, I'm supposed to be dead to some things, but that this dead woman is always up on my heels.
Yes.
And in my poem, and I can't remember it all, and I wish I could have found it, but a few of my lines were, I'm now seeing to be blind, and I'm freed to be shackled. As in, God has brought that clarity for me to see where I really am, a real true diagnosis of where I am in a spiritual state. And I'm blind, I'm shackled, I'm broken. I was. I was. So, anyway, I thank God for what He's doing. I thank you all for the opportunity to come up here, even though I'm the least qualified to be up here. It's kind of, and I wrote this when you were up this morning. I wrote this, and I'm gonna close with this. In the assignment, I am finding my calling. In this assignment, it was having been forced to dig into the Word. God's revealing Himself to me. So, thank you.
Amen.